I woke up to the kind of rumble that makes your chest vibrate before your eyes are even open. At first, I thought it was thunder rolling across the foothills, the way it sometimes did in the early mornings. But this was different. This was sharper, heavier, like metal teeth grinding into the earth. I sat up in bed, confused, rubbing the sleep from my eyes as the vibration grew stronger. My house isn't near any city street. Out here, silence is normal. Noise means trouble. By the time I reached the front door, the smell hit me first. Hot tar, diesel fumes, and earth torn apart. It wrapped around me like a warning. I swung the door open and just stood there, stunned. Trucks, big, fully loaded asphalt trucks, were dumping steaming black mix onto my land. Not beside it, not near it, directly across it. A fresh line of scraped dirt and gravel sliced straight through the area where my delivery trucks normally pulled in. For a moment, I wondered if I was still dreaming. I walked toward them, barefoot on cold ground, heart pounding from shock and anger I didn't fully understand yet. A guy in a reflective vest shouted something, but the machinery drowned him out. Another truck reversed toward me, beeping loudly, forcing me to step back. "Hey!" I yelled over the engines. "What are you doing on my property?" The nearest worker finally paused long enough to answer. He didn't sound apologetic, not even close. He simply jerked a thumb toward the half-built road and said, "HOA project. We're clearing the connection point today." Connection point? To what? Before I could argue, another worker walked by with a blueprint and mumbled, "We're already behind schedule. Don't slow us down." Slow them down? While they were tearing across my land like they owned it? I raised my voice again, shouting above the machinery. "This is private land. Whose authorization do you think you have?" That's when I saw her. Carol Whitman, the HOA president from the neighboring subdivision, strutting down the gravel like she was leading a parade. Her blazer looked too clean for a construction site, her smile too confident for someone trespassing on another person's property. "Good morning, Jake," she said as if we were old friends meeting over coffee. "Isn't it wonderful? The community's new access road is finally being installed." My jaw tightened. Access road? Across my land? You can't just build here. She lifted a laminated sheet in front of my face, a smug little smirk forming as if she were holding the winning lottery ticket. "We have a permit. Everything is approved." I took the paper from her hand and scanned it. It didn't take a trained eye to see something was off. No county seal. No signatures. No recording numbers. It was a piece of paper someone printed and laminated at home. "This isn't valid," I said quietly. Carol's smile thinned, but her tone stayed sugary. "Jake, don't complicate things. This road benefits everyone. Everyone except me, the guy whose livelihood depended on the space they were ripping apart." I stepped closer. "Stop the work now." Before she could answer, a worker shouted from behind me, "We'll be done by noon whether he likes it or not." And just like that, I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was an invasion, and it was only the beginning. Carol handed me that laminated sheet like it was some sacred document, but the moment I looked at it, something inside me tightened. At first glance, it looked official enough. Bold lettering, a fake-looking watermark, and the kind of formatting someone might use to pretend they knew what government documents looked like. But then my eyes caught the detail that changed everything. There was no county stamp. No seal. No approval signature. Just blank spaces where the legal markings should have been. It was like someone downloaded a template from a website and hoped no one would notice. I took a slow breath, trying to keep my anger from spilling out too early. "Carol, where is the county authorization? Where's the recording number?" She crossed her arms, chin lifting with that smug confidence she wore like perfume. "The HOA handles its own development projects. The county doesn't need to be involved in every little thing." That was a lie. A dangerous one. And she knew it. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. Back inside my house, I grabbed my phone and dialed the county planning office. I'd dealt with them enough times for my own asphalt company to know the process by heart. If any road was being built, even a private one, it needed approval, inspection, drainage evaluation, and an officially recorded easement. A soft voice answered on the third ring. County Land Use, this is Melissa. Hi, I said, already pacing. I need to check on a permit for road construction. Parcel number. I read it off the original deed I kept in a folder near my desk. There was silence for a moment as she typed. Then she asked me to repeat the number. I did. Another pause, longer this time. Sir, she finally said, there are no permits filed on your property, and no easements recorded either. Nothing has been submitted in the past 6 months. My stomach sank, but at the same time a spark of validation flared inside me. I wasn't crazy. They really were building illegally across my land. You're certain? I asked. 100%. If a permit was filed, it would show here. And county law requires all easements to be publicly recorded. There is absolutely nothing. That was it. That was the nail in the coffin. The HOA's paperwork wasn't just suspicious. It was fabricated. I walked back outside, where Carol was overseeing the workers, like a queen surveying her kingdom. She raised an eyebrow when she saw me returning. Carol, I called out. County says no permit exists, none. That paper you showed me is worthless. Her smile dropped, but not in fear, more in irritation, like I was an inconvenience ruining her perfect morning. Jake, stop making this difficult. You're under HOA jurisdiction whether you accept it or not. And if you keep interfering, we'll have to fine you. I stared at her, stunned. I don't live in your subdivision. I'm not part of your HOA. She lifted her chin. The board voted to include your land for community development. It's all in the paperwork. Paperwork she clearly made up. I walked away, heart pounding, realizing she wasn't delusional. She was dangerous. Hours later, when the machines finally quieted down and the sun dipped low, I returned home exhausted and furious. But the sight waiting for me stiffened my spine. An HOA notice was taped to my front door. And in bold letters it declared, "Your land is now designated as HOA right-of-way." The fight had just escalated. When my work trucks couldn't reach my workshop, the damage became personal. Until that moment, the situation with the HOA felt like an intrusion, an outrageous, infuriating violation, but still something I could fight on paper, through calls, documents, and maybe a lawyer. But the morning my crew called me saying they couldn't pull into the yard because the new community access road was blocking the entire entrance, I felt something shift inside me. Anger stopped being an emotion and became a mission. For the past 12 years, I've run Turner Asphalt services from the back portion of my land. 50 acres divided between my home, a storage lot, a workshop, and a staging area where our trucks loaded up before heading to job sites. This business wasn't some hobby. It built my house. It fed my family. It paid the wages of the men who relied on me. And now a half-baked, illegally built HOA road was slicing straight through the one route large machinery needed to reach the workshop. It wasn't even that the road existed. It was where they placed it. Right across the only flat section wide enough for delivery trucks and equipment to maneuver. No one with any sense would build there unless they were trying to block access. And from what I was starting to learn, Carol Whitman had never lacked the nerve to play dirty. Around 7 a.m., my foreman, Mike, called me. His voice was tight. Jake, we can't get in. The crew returned from the supplier and the trucks can't make the turn. I stepped outside immediately. 4 of my trucks were pulled off to the side, their drivers standing beside them with arms folded and frustration written across their faces. The new asphalt strip cut across the entrance like a scar. Too narrow, too elevated, and completely blocking the turning radius of every vehicle I owned. Even if they tried driving over the edge, the drop would twist an axle. This is gonna delay us hours, one driver muttered. Hours meant money. Money I couldn't afford to throw at Carol's arrogance. Financial loss doesn't care about pride or anger. It hits fast, silent, and unforgiving. 2 commercial clients called before noon asking why my team hadn't arrived. One threatened to cancel. Another warned me that delays meant penalties. I felt my jaw tighten until it hurt. Later that afternoon, one of my neighbors, an older man named Harris, walked over while shaking his head. "Jake, heard from someone that Carol's been planning this shortcut for months. Said she didn't want her residents driving the long way around. Told folks she'd handle the paperwork one way or another. One way or another. A polite phrase for doing whatever the hell you want." I grabbed the original property map from my truck and marched toward the boundary. If Carol wanted to play games, I'd start with the ground itself. Property lines don't lie, unless someone tampers with them. The first marker was where it always had been. But the second one, something was wrong. The wooden stake leaned oddly, as if pulled out and shoved back in. Dirt around it looked disturbed. I moved to the next marker and felt my stomach twist. This one had been pushed far, far into my land, almost 30 feet past the original line. Someone had moved them deliberately. I crouched down, tracing the disturbed soil with my fingers. Then I saw them. Several fresh survey stakes, bright orange and newly placed, marching deep into my property like silent invaders, far beyond the real boundary. And suddenly I knew the road wasn't the end of their plan. It was only the beginning. The surveyor wouldn't look me in the eye, and that told me everything. I found him behind his truck on a dusty service road about a mile from my property, flipping through papers like he wished he were anywhere else. His name was Daniel Wade, a mid-level contract surveyor who'd worked in the county for years. I'd seen him around job sites before. The man was usually confident, brisk, and borderline dismissive, the kind of guy who measured property lines the way surgeons make incisions. Precise, certain, untouchable. But when he saw me walking up, he froze like a kid caught stealing. "Daniel," I said, keeping my voice calm even though my pulse was hammering. "We need to talk about those boundary markers." He swallowed hard. "Jake, I'm on a tight schedule today." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "So am I. Someone moved my markers 30 feet into my land, and your initials are on the staking report." His eyes darted toward the tree line, then toward his truck, then anywhere except my face. That's when I knew in my bones, that he had something to hide. "Look," he murmured, rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't want to do it, but I was pushed into a corner. "By who?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. He hesitated, lips tightening. Then he exhaled sharply and whispered, "Carol Whitman." The words hit me like a punch, even if they didn't surprise me. Daniel leaned back against his truck as if the confession drained him. "She told me the HOA had secured the right to adjust the boundary for community access. Said the county was on board, said it was already approved. She insisted the markers needed to shift to match the new easement lines." "There are no new easement lines," I said. "The county confirmed that." He shut his eyes. "I know that now. But she made it sound urgent. Said if I didn't cooperate, she'd report me for professional negligence. And she knows people, Jake, in the zoning office, the kind of people who can freeze your licensing renewal." There it was, the corruption I suspected, now spoken aloud. While he talked, I casually tapped the recording app on my phone, leaving it in my pocket. Legal nugget. My state allows one-party consent for recordings. As long as I was part of the conversation, I could legally record every word, and I wanted every single syllable of this. "She used you to give that road fake legitimacy," I said quietly. Daniel nodded miserably. "I regret it. I shouldn't have touched your land, but you didn't hear it from me. If Carol finds out I talked, she'll bury my career." I looked at him, really looked at him. He wasn't cruel or malicious, just weak, and weak men crumble under pressure from people like Carol. But weakness didn't excuse the damage he'd helped cause. I walked away with the recording buzzing in my pocket like a loaded weapon. Every word he'd spoken was proof the HOA's entire road project wasn't just sloppy, it was illegal from the ground up. For the first time, I understood just how deep Carol's influence ran. This wasn't a petty neighborhood dispute. This was a coordinated power play, supported by people who should have known better. By the time I drove home, my anger had become something sharper: purpose. But the moment I stepped onto my porch, purpose turned into shock. A bright orange citation was taped to my door. It accused me of interfering with HOA infrastructure, and it was only the beginning. I inspected their new road and instantly knew how to destroy their entire plan. Not because I wanted to, not yet at least, but because the moment my boot touched the fresh asphalt, the truth cracked beneath it. Literally. The surface had that dull, brittle feel of a mix stretched too thin, too dry, and too cheap. It reminded me of the kind of shortcuts contractors take when they're trying to pocket money or rush a project before anyone notices the corners they cut. I crouched down and pinched a bit of loose aggregate between my fingers. It crumbled before I could roll it. That alone told me everything I needed to know. The crew they hired didn't follow even the most basic compaction standards. They hadn't layered it properly. They hadn't used the right binder content. And worst of all, the underlayment, what little they bothered to put down, was uneven enough to cause failure the moment the weather shifted. They'd built a ticking time bomb. I walked slowly along the entire stretch, documenting every flaw with my phone. Soft spots, hairline cracks already forming, poor grading on the shoulder, inconsistent mat thickness. If someone had told me a group of teenagers did this as a school project, I might have believed them more than believing a professional crew had done it. My foreman, Mike, pulled up in his pickup, jumped out, and stood beside me with a low whistle. "Jake, this thing won't survive a season," he said. "One good freeze, and half of it'll buckle." I nodded. They cut corners everywhere. They used the cheapest materials they could find. Even the spreading pattern is sloppy. Mike knelt down, tapping a weak spot with a steel rod. The sound was hollow. I've seen better work done on temporary parking lots. I took another slow walk down the road, letting my frustration simmer into something more controlled. Anger wouldn't help me. Not yet. Facts would. Evidence would. And right now, the road itself was the greatest piece of evidence I could ever hope for. Still, tearing it up or blocking work right then would only play into Carol's hands. She wanted to paint me as an aggressor, so I forced myself to step back. I needed more proof, more leverage, something bigger than a poorly built road. I kept filming, narrating each flaw with dates, times, and location markers. When this went to court, and I knew it would, every crack they tried to hide would be the nail in their coffin. Then I heard that familiar voice cutting through the quiet afternoon. Carol. She marched down the road with 2 HOA board members flanking her like bodyguards. They dressed like they were attending a ribbon-cutting ceremony instead of a site inspection. Expensive shoes, polished smiles, clipboards held like scepters. The arrogance was almost theatrical. "Gentlemen," she said brightly, ignoring the fact that this wasn't her land, "isn't it beautiful? Our community has been needing this connection for years." Her board members nodded eagerly as if rehearsed. I kept my voice steady. "You built a road full of violations. It won't last." Carol gave me a dismissive wave. "Jake, the HOA doesn't need your approval. This road is now part of our infrastructure. And soon, it will blend seamlessly into the rest of the neighborhood. Their infrastructure, their land, if they got their way." I stepped back, pretending to check the shoulder, and that's when I heard her say it. "Next month, we'll extend the road even further. The board already voted. Nothing can stop it. Extend it, deeper into my land." The fight was far from over. I went to the board meeting expecting lies, but not the attack that followed. For days I'd been gathering evidence, recording statements, and documenting every flaw in their illegal road. But even with all that ammunition, stepping into the HOA's community center felt like walking into enemy territory. The room was packed. Rows of folding chairs filled with residents who looked equal parts curious, irritated, and ready for drama. Word had spread fast about the road, and about me. I took a seat near the back, doing my best to blend in as a guest, even though I could feel dozens of eyes flicking toward me. Some people whispered, some glared, Others offered tight, sympathetic nods. It was clear not everyone was blindly following Carol Whitman. The board tables sat at the front like a courtroom bench. Carol occupied the center seat, posture straight, chin high, looking like she'd been waiting to put on this performance. The moment she saw me, that smirk curled onto her face like it had been rehearsed. "Before we begin tonight's agenda," she announced loudly, "I want to address the disruption caused by a certain individual who has been interfering with community progress." The room murmured, turning toward me. I kept my jaw locked and my expression calm. Carol continued, "Some people just can't accept improvements. They cling to outdated boundaries and refuse to recognize the HOA's authority." A few people clapped. Others looked uncomfortable. Then she gestured toward me. "Mr. Turner, since you seem so desperate for attention, would you like to explain why you've been stopping progress and harassing contractors on our projects?" Harassing? That was the moment I realized she hadn't invited me as a guest. She wanted a spectacle. I stood slowly, steadying my breathing. "I didn't harass anyone. You built a road on land you don't own, and you used a surveyor you pressured into falsifying boundaries." Several gasps rippled through the room. Carol burst into a laugh, so forced it cracked at the edges. "Oh, please. More of your conspiracy theories? Do you have proof? Or are we just expected to take your word for it?" I pulled my phone from my pocket. "Actually, yes. You are expected to hear it." I hit play. The room fell silent as Daniel's shaky voice filled the air. "She told me the HOA had secured the right to adjust the boundary. She said the county approved it. She pressured me to shift the markers." Every sentence struck like a hammer. Homeowners leaned forward. Some stared at Carol in disbelief. Others whispered angrily to one another. One man stood up. "Carol, you told us everything was legally approved." A woman beside him added, "You made us vote on funding this. Were we voting on lies?" Carol's composure cracked for the first time. Her face tightened, eyes darting like she was searching for an exit. Then she forced a scoff. "That recording is fake," she snapped. "Edited. Manipulated." He probably threatened the surveyor into saying that. The room erupted again, this time louder, divided down the middle. Some residents shouted for transparency. Others demanded the meeting stay on track. The board looked panicked. Papers rustled, chairs scraped, voices overlapped. It was chaos, pure chaos, and for the first time Carol wasn't controlling it. She tried to regain order, pounding a gavel against the table, but the damage was done. The room was split. Lines had been drawn, and as I left the building, feeling dozens of eyes follow me, my phone vibrated. A new email. From the HOA's attorney. Subject line: Notice of intent to sue for defamation. The attack had officially begun. The county inspector took one look at the road and swore under his breath. I'd called the county first thing that morning, forwarding photos, videos, and the recording from the surveyor. They told me they'd send someone as soon as possible, which usually means sometime next month. But apparently the words unauthorized roadway construction and possible easement manipulation got their attention. By noon, a white county truck was rolling up my drive. The inspector who stepped out, name tag reading R. McCarthy, was a middle-aged man with sun-toughened skin and a clipboard tucked under one arm. The moment he approached the road, he didn't even pretend to hide his reaction. "Oh, for God's sake," he muttered. "Who built this?" "The HOA," I said. "Or at least, whoever they hired." He crouched low, ran a gloved hand along the edge, then tapped his boot against a soft spot. It sank slightly. His eyebrows shot up. "This fails basic compaction standards," he said. "And look at this. No drainage grading, no culvert, no runoff plan. Water's gonna pool here and eat the whole thing alive." I watched him walk further down the stretch, scribbling notes, shaking his head like he was witnessing a crime scene. Which, in a way, he was. "There's no slope correction," he continued, voice rising. "The material mix is wrong. The shoulders aren't stabilized. And this connection, good grief, This connection isn't even aligned with the public right-of-way. It's all off by several feet. I folded my arms. So, you're saying they violated… What? One regulation? 5? He let out a dry laugh. Try dozens. County must approve subdivision road construction. Always. Even if it's private, even if it's funded by an HOA. There are environmental requirements, safety requirements, civil engineering requirements. They ignored all of it. Hearing that from a county official almost made the headache worth it. Almost. McCarthy circled back to his truck and pulled out a bright yellow form. He slapped it onto a metal clipboard, wrote quickly, then tore the original sheet free. "This is a stop work order," he said, handing it to me. "No more construction, no more paving, no more expansion. Not a single shovel of dirt is to be moved until the county reviews everything." I nodded, relief mixing with anger. Good. Maybe this will slow them down. But I should have known better. As if summoned by the scent of authority, Carol came marching up the gravel with 2 HOA board members scrambling behind her. Her expression twisted when she saw the inspector. "What's going on here?" she demanded. McCarthy didn't even blink. "Ma'am, this roadway violates multiple county codes. Construction is halted effective immediately." Carol snatched the paper from my hand so aggressively it bent. She skimmed it for half a second before ripping it into pieces and tossing them at my feet. "This land is under HOA development," she hissed. "We don't answer to you, or the county." McCarthy stepped forward, jaw tightening. "Ma'am, tearing up a county order is a serious offense." She ignored him and stormed off, barking at her board members to resume planning. The inspector watched her go, eyes narrowing. Then he turned to me and lowered his voice. "Jake, I'm filing my report today, and I'll recommend charges against the HOA. But understand something." He paused, weighing his words. "People like her don't back down. Retaliation is likely. You'd better be ready." And for the first time, I wondered just how far Carol was willing to go. I thought the fight was about land, until the threats started targeting my family. Up until then, everything Carol and the HOA had thrown at me felt like an assault on my property, my business, and my rights. But the moment the harassment seeped past my fence line and into the quiet spaces of my home, something inside me shifted. Land can be defended. Equipment can be replaced. But when a man feels his family isn't safe, the fight becomes personal in a different way. It began with anonymous letters shoved into my mailbox. No return address, no signature. Just typed messages telling me to stop causing trouble, warning that the community won't tolerate your interference, and implying that accidents happen when people refuse to cooperate. At first I tossed them aside, refusing to give them power. But the tone of each one grew colder, sharper, more threatening. Then came the flyers. Dozens of them, scattered across my driveway like fallen leaves. Each one printed with bold accusations. Unsafe business practices, unlicensed equipment storage, environmental hazards on Turner property. All fabricated, all designed to paint me as some reckless, dangerous neighbor poisoning the community. The next day, code enforcement showed up, twice. Both times, the officers looked embarrassed, clearly aware they were responding to bogus complaints. One even muttered, "We've been getting a lot of calls about you lately. Too many to be coincidence." They weren't coincidences. They were coordinated attacks. My employees started noticing the hostility too. When they drove in for work, residents from the new subdivision would stand near the road, arms crossed, glaring as if my crew was vandalizing their neighborhood instead of trying to reach their job site. One driver told me a woman walked right up to his truck window and yelled that he was destroying community property. Things escalated quickly after that. I held a team meeting and apologized, something I never imagined doing for a situation I didn't cause. "If anyone feels unsafe," I said, "I'll adjust your routes or shift your hours." They appreciated the offer, but the tension gnawed at me. My company wasn't just losing time, it was losing peace. I realized I needed proof of the harassment, something undeniable. So I installed cameras, front gate, driveway, workshop entrance, and the perimeter near the illegal road. Every angle covered. It only took 2 nights before I caught something. A figure creeping along the edge of my property, flashlight in hand, wearing a hooded sweatshirt and moving like someone trying not to be seen. But when the camera caught his face for a split second, my chest tightened. He wasn't a stranger. He was one of Carol's board members. He had no reason to be on my land. No right. And yet there he was, pacing, searching, surveying, like someone planning their next move. Legal nugget. Once harassment interferes with business, or crosses into stalking or trespassing, it becomes criminal. And this footage crossed every line imaginable. Still, the worst moment wasn't mine. It was my daughter's. Late one afternoon, she came running inside, pale and shaking. "Dad," she whispered, "come outside." Her voice alone made my stomach drop. I followed her to the truck we kept near the workshop. She pointed at the ground, and as soon as I looked down, rage punched me in the chest. Nails, dozens of them, freshly scattered beneath the tires, sharp, deliberate, malicious. The fight had just crossed a line I could never ignore again. When they came after my family, I decided it was time to bring out the heavy equipment. The nails under my daughter's truck tires didn't just anger me, they hardened something inside me. I had tried reason, documentation, the county, and even public exposure. But harassment that targets your child rewires your patience. Suddenly, the idea of waiting for official action felt like handing Carol the next opportunity to strike. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a stack of county maps spread across the wood. Not the photocopies the HOA used, the real, certified maps pulled from the county's GIS database. The ones that showed every contour, every easement, every legal inch of my land. Under the warm lamp glow, I traced the true boundary lines with my finger, confirming exactly where Carol's illegal road trespassed. And there it was, plain as day. The stretch of asphalt they'd laid cut across my property like a scar from a blade I never allowed. No ambiguities, no vague lines, no shared use corridor like Carol tried claiming in meetings. This was trespass, clear and simple. The next morning, I called my crew. Within an hour, 2 dump trucks, a skid steer, and my largest milling machine crawled up my driveway. The rumble of their engines was the first sound in weeks that actually eased my anger instead of intensifying it. My men stepped out, glancing toward the road, waiting for direction. Today, I told them, we reclaim what's ours, but we do it clean, by the book. We remove only what sits on my land. I walked the boundary with orange flags, marking the exact line where county maps said my property began. My boots thudded across the ground with a sense of purpose. Every flag felt like reclaiming a piece of dignity. As soon as the milling machine rolled toward the illegal road, the inevitable happened. Carol stormed down her precious pavement like a general charging into battle. Her voice sliced through the morning air. "Jake Turner, you cannot touch HOA infrastructure." I didn't even pause. "It's not HOA infrastructure," I said, raising my voice over the engine hum. "It's on my land." She planted herself in front of the road, like she thought she could block a machine that weighed more than her SUV. "You are under HOA jurisdiction, and you will be fined for every inch of damage you cause." I stepped closer, meeting her fury with calm certainty. "For the last time, Carol, I am not part of your HOA. I never was. You forged paperwork, pressured a surveyor, and built a road you had no right to build." Neighbors began gathering along the edges of the subdivision, drawn by the noise and the confrontation. Some stood with folded arms. Some whispered with uneasy curiosity. Others looked relieved, as if they'd been waiting for someone to finally stand up to the monster they'd created. Carol's face reddened until it nearly matched the color of the stop work order she'd torn up. "If you touch that road," she screamed, "I will personally see to it that you lose everything." I climbed into the milling machine, gripping the controls, the engine vibrating beneath me like a living beast ready to work. Carol's voice cracked with desperation. "Jake, stop! Do not start that machine." But the moment she shrieked that last word, I knew the time for patience was gone. I turned the key. The engine roared to life, and Carol screamed. The moment the milling drum hit the asphalt, the entire neighborhood came running. The grinding roar cut through the quiet morning like a battle cry, sending dust spiraling into the air. It echoed across the subdivision, across my field, and across every lie Carol Whitman had been building her power on. I watched the first strip of asphalt crumble under the machine's teeth, breaking apart in a gritty cascade. This wasn't just a road being pulled apart. This was the truth exposed in broad daylight. And it felt good. Really good. I kept the milling machine exactly on the boundary flags I'd placed earlier. Every inch I removed was on my land. Not a centimeter more. The metal drum chewed the illegal road with surgical precision, reducing it back to the gravel base they'd tried to hide. Within minutes, residents poured out from the subdivision, phones raised, recording everything like it was the climax of a courtroom drama. Some whispered, some shouted, some argued amongst themselves. A few even cheered, quietly, cautiously. But the loudest sound wasn't the machine. It was Carol. She sprinted down the pavement, hair wild, face flushed, arms waving like she thought she could stop a 20-ton piece of equipment with sheer indignation. She darted in front of the machine, and I had to yank the controls to idle before she did something irreversible. "Stop!" she screamed, planting herself between me and the broken asphalt. "This is HOA property. You are destroying community infrastructure." I climbed down slowly, boots sinking into loose debris. "No," I said firmly. "I am removing an illegal structure on my land. Only what's mine. I haven't touched 1 inch beyond the boundary." "You're lying!" she shrieked. "You're trespassing on our road." Before I could answer, sirens cut through the tension. A sheriff's cruiser rolled up, lights flashing in the morning sun. The crowd parted as Sheriff Harlan stepped out, taking in the scene, the machine, the crowd, the ripped-up asphalt, and Carol practically vibrating with rage. He walked straight to me first. "Jake, what's going on here?" I handed him the county maps, the certified boundary lines, and a printed copy of the county's stop work order. "Just reclaiming my land, Sheriff," I said calmly. "Only the portion of the road they built illegally." Carol stormed toward him. "He's destroying HOA property. Arrest him." Sheriff Harlan held up a hand. "Ma'am, let me finish reviewing this." It took him less than a minute. His eyes lifted from the paperwork, expression hardening. "Ma'am, everything Jake is doing here is within his legal rights." The crowd murmured, some gasping, others nodding as if they'd expected this all along. Carol's face drained of color. "That can't be right. He's lying. He forged those documents." Another resident stepped forward. "Carol, you told us the county approved this road, and that Jake was part of the HOA. Another added, "And that the surveyor confirmed the easement." Someone else said. Sheriff Harlan turned to her slowly. "Ma'am, the county has confirmed no permit was filed, and if there's evidence you submitted falsified or fabricated documents, that's a criminal matter." Carol stumbled back, suddenly silent. Then the sheriff delivered the final blow. "Based on what I'm seeing here, the county may pursue charges for document falsification and unlawful construction." The words rippled through the crowd like a shockwave, and for the first time since this nightmare began, Carol Whitman looked genuinely afraid. Carol walked into court smiling. She didn't walk out the same way. I'll never forget the confidence she carried that morning, as if she were strutting into an award ceremony rather than a lawsuit she had initiated. Her heels clicked on the marble floor, echoing like a challenge. Her board members trailed behind her in stiff formation, and their attorney walked with the smug assurance of a man who thought he'd already won. They had sued me first, claiming property damage, defamation, interference with community development. But my countersuit hit harder. Trespassing, falsification of documents, boundary manipulation, harassment, and business interference. The courtroom didn't feel like a place for justice. It felt like a battlefield. When we were called forward, I saw the judge's expression before anyone spoke. He wasn't amused. A thick file sat in front of him, stuffed with more evidence than most property cases ever see. Photos, recordings, maps, county reports, code enforcement logs. It was all there. Carol adjusted her blazer and smiled at the judge as if charm alone could erase months of chaos. It couldn't. The HOA attorney started by painting me as some sort of troublemaker who refused to cooperate with a community improvement initiative. He used words like obstruction, hostility, and aggression. He even tried to claim the road benefited county traffic. The judge listened without expression, tapping a pen against the desk. Then it was our turn. My attorney began with the laminated permit. The courtroom screens lit up with a high-resolution image of it side by side with an actual county permit. The differences were embarrassing. No seal, no signature, no approval codes. Nothing resembling legality. The judge leaned closer, squinting. Next came the surveyor's recorded confession. His voice filled the courtroom, shaky and miserable, describing how Carol pressured him to shift boundary markers and threatened his licensing renewal. The moment the recording ended, a ripple of shock moved through the room. Even Carol's attorney lost a shade of confidence. Then the county inspector's report was read aloud. Violation after violation, each one describing a layer of the HOA's deception. Drainage failures, material inconsistencies, no approval filings, no environmental review. It was a checklist of illegal actions packaged as community development. But the final blow came when my attorney presented the harassment evidence. Letters, flyers, vandalism, trespassing footage. The judge's expression darkened with every new piece. He slammed his pen down. "I've heard enough," he said. Silence swallowed the courtroom. He began with the facts. The HOA trespassed. The HOA falsified documents. The HOA interfered with a private business. And the HOA engaged in retaliatory harassment. His ruling was decisive and devastating. The HOA was found guilty on all major counts. They were ordered to pay damages for business losses, legal costs, and property restoration. They were required to remove all remaining debris from the illegal road and rebuild proper access to my workshop at their own expense. And finally, the judge announced that Carol Whitman was being removed as HOA president effective immediately and referred for criminal investigation regarding falsified documents. Carol's face went pale. Her smile vanished. Her confidence evaporated. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. As the hearing adjourned, homeowners hurried after me in the hallway. Their voices were low, hesitant, almost ashamed. "Jake, would you help us dissolve the HOA?" And just like that, I realized my fight with Carol wasn't the final chapter. It was the start of something much bigger. After months of chaos, I finally stood on my property and felt it was truly mine again. The morning air was calmer than it had been in a long time. No machinery trespassing, no HOA board members sneaking around, no shouting matches or threats. Just the soft hum of birds, the rustle of trees, and the quiet confidence of land that had been fought for and finally reclaimed. For the first time since the nightmare began, I could breathe without feeling like the ground beneath me was shifting under someone else's authority. Restoration wasn't easy, but it was satisfying. My crew and I spent weeks clearing the debris the HOA left behind, chunks of broken asphalt, damaged soil, and piles of improperly dumped gravel. We regraded the land, stabilized the surface, and laid fresh access paths that aligned exactly with county-approved maps. When the final layer of clean gravel settled into place, it felt like resetting the heartbeat of my business. But the restoration didn't end with dirt and machinery. Something deeper was changing in the community itself. Homeowners who once stood silently behind Carol began stepping forward, not with excuses, but with apologies. They admitted they'd been intimidated, misled, or simply worn down by her manipulation. Without her iron grip on the board, the remaining members struggled to justify their past decisions. Meetings became tense, not because of conflict with me, but because the residents had finally realized how far the HOA had strayed from fairness. Little by little, the subdivision began shifting away from the toxic culture Carol created. Some people pushed for reform. Others whispered about dissolving the HOA altogether. Whatever direction they chose, one thing was clear. The blind obedience that once protected Carol had evaporated. During those weeks, I often walked the boundary with the same county maps that anchored me throughout the battle. And every time I ran my fingers along the marked lines, I remembered the final legal nugget that guided me through all this. Always verify easements through county records. Not HOA claims. Not laminated sheets. Not community votes. County records. That alone can save a person from losing land they already own. As the dust settled, I found myself reflecting on everything I'd endured. The anger, the fear, the threats. The weight on my family. The long nights preparing evidence. The humiliating moments of being mocked in public. And the victories, small at first, then monumental. This fight had taken pieces of me, but it also returned something just as important. Certainty. Certainty in my rights. Certainty in the law. Certainty in standing up when every reasonable voice tells you to sit down. To everyone listening to my story, I want to leave you with a lesson. Never assume someone else knows your rights better than you. And never let intimidation, no matter how official it looks, override the truth. If you've ever fought an HOA, a corrupt board, or a power-hungry official, share your story. Share and subscribe if you want more real stories where justice hits back harder than corruption expects. Because this journey isn't finished. Not for me. Not for my land. Not for the community that finally saw the truth. One evening, just as I locked up the workshop, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Mr. Turner," a county official said, "I need to inform you of something we uncovered. Another structure the HOA built without permits. Another structure." My peace had returned, but it seemed the fight was far from over.